Honored parents, I am now on an expedition to the westward with Captain Lewis and Captain Clark, who are appointed by the President of the United States to go through the interior parts of North America, to ascend the Missouri River with a boat, and then to go to the Western Ocean. If we live to return, and if we make great discoveries as we expect, the United States is promised to make us great rewards. They were a small party charged with going where no one from the outside world had ever gone, to open one of the last great wilderness regions of Earth, a place they thought might still hold woolly mammoths and other prehistoric creatures. To find out what was really out there and to survive was the equivalent in its day of a journey to the moon. To lead this dangerous expedition, President Thomas Jefferson chose his chief aide, Meriwether Lewis, a skilled soldier and woodsman. He called him a man of courage undaunted, with qualifications as if implanted by nature for this express purpose. He was only 28. Lewis wanted a co-captain for such a long and risky mission. His old Army commander, William Clark, who was 4 years older, an expert map maker and riverman, and a proven leader. Lewis asked Clark to join him.
In this enterprise, with its dangers and honors, there is no man on earth with whom I should feel equal pleasure in sharing them as yourself.
Clark answered Lewis's letter.
My friend, I'd join you with hand and heart.
Many feared they would never return. But if they made it, they would forever change the course of history. At the time, the great powers of the world could only guess what existed in the uncharted West. Native Americans already called this land home, but other nations hoped for a wealth of natural riches and had staked competing claims. Britain to Canada and the Oregon Country, Russia the Pacific Northwest, Spain the West and parts of the South, France, an immense tract called Louisiana. By sending an expedition into foreign land, Thomas Jefferson hoped to open the West up for the United States. In 1803, a surprise. Napoleon offered to sell the entire Louisiana territory. The U.S. quickly purchased it for $15 million, more than doubling the size of the nation. To cross this unknown land would be among the most ambitious and difficult journeys ever conceived. Clark wrote in his journal,
All in health and readiness to set out, boats and everything complete with the necessary stores of provisions, though not as much as I think necessary for the multitude of Indians through which we must pass.
They pushed off upstream from St. Louis. Young American soldiers and French-Canadian rivermen hand-picked for strength and wilderness skills. Among them, a man named York, Clark's slave and companion since childhood. All were leaving their families behind for years. Their main mission was to find a water route to the Pacific and the Orient beyond. the long-hoped-for Northwest Passage. Lewis was a studious and solitary man. Under Jefferson, he had been trained to observe and record for science every new thing he saw, and he spent hours exploring alone with his dog. In this unfamiliar territory, just collecting a specimen could be dangerous. Only 2 days out, Lewis had nearly lost his life, with a long journey still ahead. But a greater challenge they faced every day, the backbreaking work of moving tons of gear upriver against the full flood of the powerful, unpredictable Missouri. William Clark.
The sergeant at the helm run under a bending tree and broke the mast. I am tormented with mosquitoes and ticks.
Meriwether Lewis.
The barge run foul 3 times today on logs. Happily, no injury was sustained, though the barge was in imminent danger.
Faced a bad sandbar where our tow rope broke twice. A storm struck our boat. It would have thrown her up on the sand island, dashed to pieces in an instant. I thought the party leaped out and kept her off.
Some days they made only a few miles with more than 3,000 to go. Clark was a practical and plain-spoken man. He usually commanded the men on the river and kept records to make an accurate new map of the West. As they pushed up the Missouri toward present-day Omaha, Nebraska, they were deep into Indian lands. Traders and trappers had been up here, but no well-armed military party.
A party of Otoe and Missouri Nation came to camp. Captain Lewis and myself sent them some roasted meat. In return, they sent us watermelons. Been up the greater part of last night with Sergeant Floyd, who is as bad as he can be. He expired, having said to me before his death that he was going away. We buried him with all the honors of war, much lamented.
They pushed on into the heart of the Great Plains.
The immense river waters one of the fairest portions of the globe, nor do I believe that there is in this universe a similar extent of country.
In this vast grassland, Lewis discovered new species, including animals that barked, like little toy dogs, he wrote. They would be named prairie dogs. Where there were buffalo, there were also buffalo hunters. Lewis and Clark were under orders to be friendly with native tribes.
Children, we have been sent by the
Lewis
great
also
chief
let
of the
them know,
17
in
great
full military
nations
dress,
of America.
that the United States now claimed their land. There were only medals and small gifts for now, but in the future, Lewis told them, other Americans would arrive with a wealth of trade goods.
And to inform you that a great council was lately held between this great chief and your old fathers.
Lewis and Clark were passing through a world unknown to them, but well known to the Arikara, Sioux, and Omaha, to the Crow, Cheyenne, and Blackfeet, to more than 170 tribes and hundreds of thousands of people living west of the Mississippi, hunters, farmers, fishermen. Some traded peacefully, some were regularly at war. The Teton Sioux were the most powerful tribe in the Middle Missouri. They controlled traffic on that stretch of the river and had stopped traders before. The expedition now approached Teton land and a tribe that had the superior numbers to annihilate them. The encounter did not go well.
3 of the young men seized the cable of the boat, and the second chief was very insolent, declaring I should not go on.
Finally, Chief Black Buffalo waved his men off. The entire expedition could have ended that day near the present site of Pierre, South Dakota. They had come some 1,600 miles in 5 months, but ahead lay the long, bitter cold of winter on the northern prairie. Lewis and Clark hoped to stay near the Mandan and Hidatsa, buffalo hunters who were often visited by traders. The tribes welcomed them as friends, and the Mandan called them Mushi, the pretty people. Together, their 5 villages were home to some 4,000 people, more than lived in St. Louis at the time. Nearby, the expedition settled in for 5 months of bone-chilling cold.
The thermometer stood at 45 degrees below zero. Snowed all day. The ice ran thick, air cold. 3 men frostbit badly.
The captains knew almost nothing about the land of the West. They hired an interpreter, a French fur trader named Charbonneau. He had 2 young Shoshone wives captured by the Hidatsa in a raid. The captains asked him to bring one along to help interpret on the trip. She was about 16 years old and pregnant. The Hidatsa called her Sagagawea. Tribal leaders such as Black Cat told them of a chain of mountains far to the west that could be crossed in half a day, but they would need horses. Sagagawea's tribe, the Shoshone, would have horses and might help. In winter quarters they called Fort Mandan. The captains prepared a shipment for President Jefferson to be taken back downriver by some of the men in spring. Clark drew a map of the land while Lewis packed what he had collected, including dozens of new plant and animal species. Sagagawea gave birth in February, a difficult labor assisted by Louis. Tiny Jean-Baptiste Charbonneau became the final member of the expedition.
We were now about to penetrate a country in which the foot of civilized man had never trodden. The good or evil it had in store for us was yet to determine. I could but esteem this moment of my departure among the most happy of my life.
Sagagawea quickly grew more important to the expedition. She showed them edible plants and roots, white apples, wild artichokes, and licorice. When a boat overturned in a strong wind, it was Sagagawea who saved their most important items. Off the river, they faced other challenges. In present-day Montana, the expedition came to a fork in the river and a critical decision.
Which of these rivers was the Missouri? To mistake the stream would not only lose us the whole of the season, but would probably so dishearten the party that it might defeat the expedition altogether.
The Hidatsa had told the captains to look for a waterfall as proof that they were still on the Missouri. What Louis found would test the strength and spirit of his men. The Great Falls of the Missouri were 5 massive cascades. To continue, they would have to carry everything vital to the expedition on a detour more than 17 miles around the falls over rough terrain.
We all believe that we are about to enter on the most perilous and difficult part of our voyage. All appear perfectly to have made up their minds to succeed in the expedition or perish in the attempt.
At every halt, these poor fellows tumble down and are asleep in an instant. Some are limping from the soreness of their feet, others faint and unable to stand. Yet all go with cheerfulness.
The grueling portage left the men badly worn down with mountains still to come. But they willingly followed their captains, very different men who seemed to command as one. There is no record the two friends ever argued or disagreed on an important decision. They had lost almost a month at the falls, and they needed to find the Shoshone and obtain horses before the cold weather set in. Sacagawea now recognized places from her youth and could help guide the men, but the Shoshone remained elusive. Finally, Lewis set out with a scouting party to search for them.
If we do not find them, I fear the successful issue of our voyage will be very doubtful.
Clark and the rest of the men labored on through frigid water that was barely passable. They planned to reunite further upriver once Lewis had found the Shoshone. Ahead somewhere was the Missouri's source. From there, the men hoped for a quick mountain crossing and then an easy ride downstream to the Pacific Ocean. Ahead of the boats, Lewis made an historic discovery.
I had accomplished one of those great objects on which my mind has been unalterably fixed for many years.
The source of the great Missouri River had finally been found. From the Continental Divide above, Lewis hoped to see a river heading westward toward the ocean. Instead, he confronted a scene of crushing disappointment.
I discovered immense ranges of high mountains, still to the west of us, with their tops partially covered with snow.
The need for horses was now more important than ever. The very next day, Lewis finally made contact with the Shoshone and persuaded them to accompany him to meet with Clark on the river. Once again, the fate of the entire expedition was in the hands of native people who had never seen strangers like these before. As Sacagawea began to interpret, the stakes could hardly have been higher. Suddenly, she paused. Across the years of separation from her tribe, Sacagawea recognized Kameowe, the Shoshone chief. He was her brother. As the translation proceeded from Shoshone to Hidatsa to French to English, the two captains must have realized that once again they were extraordinarily lucky. They would have their horses. They spent more than 2 weeks with the Shoshone, a time of reunion for one and rest for them all. But ahead, a mountain barrier whose size no one had anticipated loomed like a monster with 100 heads. The United States lay behind them now. Ahead, lands claimed by Britain, Spain, and Russia. They entered the Bitterroot Range of the Rocky Mountains, near today's Montana-Idaho border. An early storm brought bitter cold and made a dangerous crossing even more difficult, coating the steep slopes in snow and ice. Their Shoshone guide, old Toby, even lost the way for a time.
I could observe high, rugged mountains in every direction, as far as I could see.
Worst of all, there was almost no game. The crossing became a starvation trek.
We suffered everything cold, hunger, and fatigue could impart.
I have been wet and as cold in every part as I ever was in my life. Indeed, I was at one time fearful my feet would freeze in the thin moccasins which I wore.
After 2 agonizing weeks, they had nothing left to eat but a little soup, bear oil, and candles. Desperate, Clark and a small party went ahead, hoping to find a way out of the mountains. Clark finally found a way down from the snow-covered mountains to a lush, open country. They were found by children of the Nez Perce tribe and made their way to a nearby village. As the story goes, the strangers might have been killed, but for an old woman named Watkuwais, who pleaded for their lives. For 2 weeks, the Nez Perce provided food and comfort. Lewis would later call the Nez Perce the most hospitable, honest, and sincere people we met with in our voyage. For the first time since setting out 17 months before, they were going downstream. But ahead were rapids so dangerous the nearby tribes gathered to watch the white men drown. They were heading down the Columbia, the great river of the Northwest. It was the last highway leading to the Pacific, the realm of tribes such as the Yakima, Umatilla, Walla Walla, and Chinook. There was one all-consuming thing on their minds.
This great Pacific Ocean, which we have been so long anxious to see.
Finally, the moment was at hand, after a year and a half of exhausting struggle.
Ocean in view!
Lewis must have felt triumphant. His party had done what many considered impossible. They had made it all the way to the Pacific alive.
The men appear much satisfied with their trip, beholding with astonishment the high waves dashing the rocks in this immense ocean.
It was late in this season, and they had to face the reality of another long winter far from home. The captains asked the entire corps to vote on the location of a winter campsite.
Very well. Second option, on the south bank.
The first time in recorded U.S. history that a slave or a woman was allowed to vote. Near what is now Astoria, Oregon, they built winter quarters, named Fort Clatsop after the nearby coastal tribe. They traded with their Indian neighbors for salmon, berries, and roots, and settled in for 4 miserable months. There were only 12 days without rain. The winter dampened their spirits as well. They were homesick and longed to see their loved ones back in the States. Most at home assumed they were dead. Nearly 2 years years after setting out, they headed back upriver, crossing land now charted on Clark's new map. The return trip would take only 6 months. In the end, the journey opened up the West to their fellow countrymen. It was the beginning of a new era for the United States. But the Native American way of life would never be the same. They had passed among some 50 tribes without whose help they might never have returned. None played a greater role in their success than the young woman at their side. At the Mandan and Hadassah villages, they bid farewell to Sacagawea, who stayed behind with her family. She had endured every danger and deprivation while also caring for a child. Most of the men would never see her again. 28 months after setting out, Lewis and Clark reached St. Louis, ending an 8,000-mile odyssey. They were acclaimed as national heroes, the first U.S. citizens to cross the continent. Lewis had described at least 178 plants and 122 animals new to science. Clark had drawn new and accurate maps that would guide the next generation of pioneers. Together, they had blazed the path of their nation's future. Friends to the end, the two captains met very different fates. Meriwether Lewis was named governor of the Louisiana Territory, but he fell into a deep depression and is believed to have taken his own life only 3 years after the expedition. By contrast, William Clark went on to a life of success, serving as governor of the Missouri Territory. So different in nature, the two never lost admiration for one another. Clark was a father to 10 children. His firstborn he named Meriwether Lewis Clark.
This bear is being shot, but not with guns. A National Geographic film crew is shooting him on 70mm IMAX film.
I love working in this format because it's so much about the photography.
Back to one, that's looking good. Here we go, everyone.
Big camera, big gear, big adventure. It's the largest movie film format on Earth.
When you pull one person out, the whole thing can crumble. So everybody's willpower is what makes these things happen.
It's a larger-than-life film about one of the greatest adventures in history, the epic journey of Lewis and Clark across the American West. In 1802, President Thomas Jefferson commissioned Meriwether Lewis to find an all-water route to the Pacific. He urged Lewis to study the face of the country and to make a careful record of the plants, animals, and the inhabitants of this strange new land. Most of the country west of the Mississippi was a mysterious blank on the American map. When the explorers left their familiar world behind, they entered a land as unknown to them as the moon.
Yeah, that's better.
2 centuries later, director Bruce Nyber and his production team are setting out to capture the journey on IMAX film.
I think that the hardest thing is going to be maintaining a feeling for the audience that they are there somehow watching.
Co-producers Lisa Truitt and Jeff Miller scoured the western United States for the best locations.
We've had to go around and pick places in America and the general area where Lewis and Clark went, and they're just the most beautiful spots in America, you know, except for these big cameras we've got. It's 200 years ago.
During the next few months, the crew will travel from Oregon to Nebraska, recreating the hardships and the triumphs of the original expedition. Director of Photography T.C. Christensen heads the camera crew.
An IMAX frame is about 10 times the image size of that negative in a movie theater. So every frame is almost the size of a postcard.
Video man, hold on, moving, crane's moving.
Everything about this production is huge. The crew, the cranes, the camera, the film stock, and the animals. The very first day of the shoot, the crew faces down an 800-pound grizzly named Tank. Lewis and Clark had never seen anything as fierce as a grizzly. Even when shot, these bears chased the explorers down. The crew is going to recreate a scene where a grizzly chases Lewis and Clark's men into a river.
I'm gonna have the bear in back of me.
Clint Younggreen is one of Tank's trainers.
If anything happens, if you trip and stumble and the bear comes up on you or anything like that, don't worry about it. It's my job to protect you. Don't do anything.
Yeah, and they may be trained, but there's always that room for unpredictability, I suppose. So yeah, the fair is going to be soon, I believe.
Oh, good.
Owner and head trainer Doug Seuss gets Tank into position.
All right. Good. Stay back. Rolling.
Speed.
Finally, the chase is on. It's a good thing Tank is a trained bear, because these actors would be easy prey.
They told me where I'm supposed to run, and so I'm just running for my spot.
Action.
Tank has worked like a pro. He's earned the chance to cool off with a big gulp of Gatorade.
Good ball. Good ball. Arrest him first. Good ball. You guys got it.
In the spring of 1804, Lewis and Clark pushed out into the Missouri and began their journey west into the unknown. They were co-captains of 40 men on a military expedition into territory that had only recently become part of the United States. 2 days upriver, Lewis had an accident that could have put an end to the entire venture.
Lewis, very early on in the expedition, fell off a cliff, basically, and slid about 20 feet down, a 300-foot drop, and stopped himself with his hunting knife. So it's a great scene, but it's really hard to do.
Lewis often walked for miles along the riverbanks, searching for specimens to send back to President Jefferson. In the film, he's just found a flower he's never seen before.
He's got his flower, that's all he cares about, that's all he's focused on, is he's got this new specimen.
Lewis is so fascinated with his discovery that he loses his balance and nearly falls to his death. A stunt double will recreate the first part of the fall. He'll tumble down 20 feet, bounce off the rocks, and hope his harness stops him from going all the way.
I'm hoping it'll be essentially just a good little bungee jump.
Okay, we're ready.
Camera, rolling.
To give the audience the sensation of falling off the cliff, the crew is going to push the camera over the edge.
We're basically dropping the camera over the cliff, and it's going to give this scene a real momentum and a real exciting feel in the theater. So we really want this shot, but I mean, everything should go fine.
There's only 3 of these cameras in the world, this exact style of camera. So we throw that over the edge and something breaks, the show's over. You know, it's not a matter of, oh, we need another and, oh, we have it broken. The show's over.
Camera speed, 3, 2, 1.
That's one of the shots that I hope people notice and talk about when they come out of the theater. Was, wow, how did your stomach feel when they went over the top of that cliff and go almost straight down?
The camera survived the plunge to film again. Lewis has lost his precious specimen in the fall. For this shot, he's trying to catch the flower as he clings to the crumbling cliff. But the prop just won't fall in the right place.
You know, I was kind of surprised when the first couple of rocks bounced off my skull, and I thought, these are not little rocks, these are big rocks.
And flower. Tilt. And flower. We cut. Camera reloads. Camera reloads.
9 takes later, the flower finally tumbles within reach.
You know, there was no blood. It was good. And it just felt like real movie making. You know, it felt like, okay, this is what it's about.
Okay, moving on. We're on.
It's 5 a.m. and the beginning of a long day for the actors. Alex Rice plays Sacagawea. Sonny Surwick plays William Clark. Kelly Boulware is Meriwether Lewis.
Let's go to work. South Dakota.
Toby Tyler plays Clark's slave, York. And to play the men who became known as the Corps of Discovery, the production hired 23 river guides from Jackson Hole, Wyoming. The first thing for all the actors is to get into wardrobe and makeup.
I tell you what, I was excited to be John Coulter until I found out what I had to wear. You take the leather chaps. Ugh. Put them over the leather pants, a leather vest on top of that, and then normally a leather jacket. Nice and cool in this type of weather. But that's showbiz.
Ed is creating a boil.
Wow.
Ed's really good because I can tell it's starting to hurt. Now, 7, you're gonna have a 7-story boil.
The IMAX image will be so huge when it's projected that the tiniest detail must be exactly right.
All right, here's a real test of Ed's work. Oh, yeah. Ooh, wow.
The makeup team is working from early paintings of Mandan Indians to make the body paint authentic for the next scene. Every color, every brush stroke matches the original design.
Looking good. Very sharp.
This is the biggest set piece of the entire movie, with a reconstructed Indian village and 100 extras.
Okay, good.
The crew is racing against time to get a shot before dark. The choreography of the dancers, the firelight, and the placement of the camera are all critical.
There should be no smoke in this shot, okay? In this CGI shot, no smoke.
This could later be just
For the
empty
final
dirt
film,
area with,
computer-generated images will turn 7 lodges into a large village.
C'est beau? Parfait, merci.
I love it. It's great, man.
Are you liking this?
Little cold, but I mean, so to see all those Indians, I'm like in a dream, you know?
Makes me feel powerful.
This is a good night. Huh? Dang good night. This set is amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I'm overwhelmed. I don't know what to say. I'm overwhelmed. I love this.
Okay. Guys, we need you all to sit down, please, in your marks.
Light your globes up before you leave just so I can make sure they work. Okay, guys, you're on.
Clearing! Clearing!
You guys can pull in.
Clearing!
Yeah.
Can I help?
Take those two.
Clearing! Okay, here we go.
No, that's fine. Jam low.
Hard stuff on the ground, okay. And roll sound. Rolling! Rolling! Action! Action! Marker!
The film crew is recreating a Mandan hunting ceremony. The friendship of these Indians would become crucial to the expedition's success. They welcomed the explorers and gave them vital information about the journey upriver to the Rocky Mountains, where the Shoshone Indians lived. Lewis and Clark stayed with the Mandan through the fall and the long, cold winter.
Good! Hey guys, listen up!
Listen up, please! All those folks who got a hairpiece, wig, things like that, you have to return to the hair and makeup trailer, and they will take it off of you. Thank you!
Recreating Mandan winter scenes meant shooting in February in sub-zero temperatures. The cast and crew are getting a taste of the Arctic cold the explorers experienced.
The cold today is the kind of cold that no matter how many layers you have on, it eats right through it, chills you to the bone.
It's like 1,000 needles of ice stabbing at my feet.
It was here that Lewis and Clark met the teenage Shoshone girl, Sacagawea. Years earlier, she had been kidnapped from her family by an enemy tribe, then won in a bet by a French fur trapper named Charbonneau. Lewis and Clark realized how valuable she would be as an interpreter with the Shoshone. When the expedition set out again, Charbonneau and Sacagawea went with them. She would carry their newborn son for thousands of miles across the continent. Finally, Sacagawea was heading toward home.
We ready to try it?
Okay, let's try it. TC, you ready? Here we go. Green, action.
Crane shots give the film a feeling of sweeping through the vastness of space, capturing the grandeur of the natural world. The crew is rigging one of the most difficult crane shots of the production. To give the audience a sense of the awe Lewis must have felt when he first saw the great falls of the Missouri, the camera will sweep out over the chasm, revealing the thundering falls below. The grips are working in harnesses at the edge of a sheer drop. One slip, and they'd literally be at the end of their rope. The crew couldn't film this scene at the real Great Falls because a hydroelectric dam blocks the view. Instead, they're shooting at Twin Falls, Idaho. Even here, they have to frame out power lines and other 21st century intrusions. Computer-generated images will enhance the scene to look like the awesome cascades of the Great Falls in 1805.
That's beautiful, Todd. We're good.
Finally, the crane is rigged.
Okay, you done adding stuff? Sir. All right, let's slide the slider back about a foot.
Okay, crane.
Arm.
The grips control the crane moves.
That's good speed, Todd.
TC guides the camera and watches the shot on a video monitor.
Going.
It's like writing calligraphy with a 2-ton pen. The huge, bulky equipment must be handled with precision to get everything in the frame. And they do. It's a stunning shot. To get around the Great Falls, Lewis and Clark had to haul their canoes and supplies 17 miles through prickly pear cactus and blistering heat. In this broiling, dusty location near Twin Falls, the cast and crew are getting another taste of the struggle of the original expedition.
Oh my. Ah.
Yeah, that was a blood blister that popped.
Yeah, have they seen that? We could put some blood on that and it would look really good.
Basically the Corps members have been traveling and their feet are all beat up, and I'm going to be an example of what their feet look like.
Because there will be fresh on
Put some blood right under there.
Oh, yeah.
It's in your toenail. Just a toenail. Give me a break.
That's the problem now. How's he going to...
The explorers continued upstream to the source of the Missouri. It was there that they found Sacagawea's people and witnessed one of the most remarkable reunions in history, a moment the filmmakers will recreate for the big screen. As Sacagawea begins to interpret for Lewis and Clark, she realizes she's not just talking to a Shoshone chief. She's talking to her brother.
And action, Alex.
No, you shouldn't get up, Iki. Ewa wanango wenne.
We've all lost somebody, you know. We've all had to come home at one time or another.
And cut. Oh, that was wonderful.
The Shoshones are telling us that they would have said Sacagawea, and the Mandan Hidatsa have been telling us that they would say Sacagawea. So we don't know which it is.
No matter how the name is supposed to be said, it's a very hard one to pronounce.
Sacagawea?
Sacagawea.
Sacagawea. Sacagawea.
I don't know.
Sacagawea.
I can't say it.
Sacagawea. Sacagawea.
The correct pronunciation, I believe, is Sacagawea.
Actually, Lewis and Clark's journals record the name as Sacagawea.
Sacagawea means bird woman, so it's a lovely name.
When the explorers headed west again, Sacagawea went with them. The Bitterroot Range stretched on ahead, blocking their path. There was no all-water route to the sea. Lewis later wrote, "We suffered everything cold, hunger, and fatigue could impart." Finally, they crossed the Rockies and discovered a river flowing west. With the help of the Nez Perce Indians, they carved dugout canoes and headed downstream toward the Pacific. For the first time on the journey, the explorers are going with the current.
They probably should have portaged. They were just so anxious to get to the Pacific, and it felt so good to have that current helping them rather than fighting them, that they jumped in the boats and ran the rapids.
It's a complicated shoot with the IMAX camera in a waterproof housing mounted on a rubber raft for boat-to-boat shots.
As Kevin Costner or Steven Spielberg or anybody that worked on water will tell you, it's tough.
The river may look easy, but there are hidden dangers.
If you stay in for a couple of minutes, you can really get hypothermic pretty quick. You can flip your boat. You can get it pinned against rocks. You can get sucked under into holes that can keep you down.
And roll.
The prop dugouts are actually made of hard foam. For the movie, they're supposed to stay upright through the rapids, but it's nearly impossible to keep them from swamping.
And go, Todd. Oh, that's nice.
Oh, they're gonna eat it. No, they're not. No, they're not. No, they're not. No, they're not.
Yeah! No! Yeah! Yeah! They're up!
The next day, a cold rain sweeps through.
They have to get into wet clothes today. You know, their pants, their leathers, and their shirts haven't been dry for 4 or 5 days.
Costumes are getting kind of mucked up and the guys are freezing. But the real guys, 200 years ago, were out in this for days on end. And they couldn't switch out. You know, they couldn't go dry off and warm up. And so it does really make you wonder how they made it.
I'm soaked to the bone. These things weigh about 150 pounds each.
I'm going to be very upset if I have to put my stuff on again. Hey, my man, I swam. Hey, pass the baton, baby. I'm going in.
I'm thinking I should have taken that office job.
Wet and cold, the cast heads into the river again. For actor Toby Tyler, the rapids are more than he bargained for.
And I could feel the back of the boat start to sink, and I just kept digging. And then really quick, I just remember the boat on top of me and me underneath it.
Safety kayaker Britt Farthing is trying to get to Toby.
He went down, I could see his hands, that was it, and he stayed down. And I looked up, and I could see the boat, and when I came up, I started pushing up. As soon as he came up, he had big eyes, so I went straight to him and pulled him aside. He was pretty shocked. He thanked me more than once. Even 10 minutes later, he even said thanks as he was leaving the river.
Cut. And here comes Sacagawea.
I was a little bit scared, but once I got in the water, I just committed myself and just went away.
After 18 months and more than 4,000 miles of hard traveling, the explorers are finally within reach of their goal. William Clark wrote simply, "Ocean in view, oh the joy." They had crossed a continent and survived. Clark's map of the West would become the standard for decades to come. Lewis had found 178 plants and 122 animals new to science. Near the mouth of the Columbia River, the film crew is capturing a moment when Lewis and Clark look out across the Western Sea.
Action.
You know, that sun comes up every day and it goes down every night. Well, sometimes that creates tension because we're fighting and hurrying to get work done before the sun goes down behind that hill.
Stand by, we're going to reload.
The film always runs out at a crucial time.
For me, it's more a matter if we're chasing the light, if it's really important that we're trying to get this before the sun goes down, and right then we roll out a film.
Here we go. Action, Sonny. Action, Kelly. Cut. Beautiful. Great.
Hey, thank you very much. That's a wrap. Excellent.
The sun has set on the National Geographic film crew. Their giant images will play across 7-story screens, transporting audiences to a time when the West was still a wild, uncharted place. The 21st century team may be invisible in the theater, but their work is in every frame.